Marcus Rashford's brother and agent have travelled to Italy to hold talks with AC Milan's executives. It's understood Milan want to sign him on loan with an option to buy. I mean, Dan, obviously Milan seem to be the club that are most vocal about their interest in Marcus Rashford, but they're not the only club after him, are they?
Yeah, it feels like Marcus Rashford could be the name of the window so far, couldn't it? I feel like we'll be talking about him quite a lot in this window, but AC Milan seem to be the ones who are making that contact with his agent, as you mentioned there, Dwayne. But in terms of other clubs who are also interested in Marcus Rashford, we're looking at, first of all, the Champions League finalists of last year, Borussia Dortmund, and then also Serie A giants Juventus. Two very interesting other teams, and we can talk about AC Milan in a second. But when you look at Juventus, for example, Thiago Motta is their manager. Very young team, an average age of 24 years old. How would Marcus Rashford fit into a team that's quite young, developing? Borussia Dortmund, of course, finalists last year. We saw Jadon Sancho go on loan there last year, had quite a profitable year. It was also good for United in keeping his market value as well. But AC Milan look now like they're the ones really making an effort to get him on loan with a potential option to buy as well.
Sam, is Milan a good fit for Marcus Rashford?
I think in terms of the pathway, it's worked for them in the last few seasons. We've seen Loftus-Cheek, Tomori go out there as well. And Serie A in general, it's been good for players that haven't really found their feet in the Premier League, with Lookman now African Player of the Year. We've seen Tammy Abraham, who's now at AC Milan as well. I think it will just be a good move for him, a place where he can find his confidence. The only thing I would say is that their most exciting player is a player that plays in his position. That's Rafael Leao. He's played 23 times this season. He's been in and out of the team in terms of playing consistently. He's only got 6 goals this season, but his last performance against Inter Milan in the Super Cup was incredible. So I think it will add to the competition for AC Milan. They're still 8th at the moment. They're probably going to be wanting to play Champions League football, and that would be a good challenge for him.
I think it's with the side of AC Milan as well. Sergio Conceição's come in. Quite liked a 4-4-2 at Porto. We saw Marcus Rashford have his best season under Erik Ten Hag, at times playing as a centre-forward, scored 13 of those 30 goals in that centre-forward position. So that could be an area of the team where he actually comes in, Leao plays on the left, Rashford maybe as that left striker in a 4-4-2, and that might work.
Less pressure on him, Dave, as well. I feel like there's so much pressure on him at Manchester United, but there'll be less pressure and maybe that will see him thrive again. Absolutely,
and Lookman's a great example of that. Lookman was a player that was bouncing around the leagues, spent at Leipzig in Germany, played for a number of clubs in the Premier League. But I tell you what, he's probably the best player on the planet right now, Lookman for me. Unbelievable in the Europa League final. That hat-trick was so good. Left foot, right foot, the finish on the back post. And I think you look at someone like Marcus Rashford, a similar kind of profile to Lookman in the sense of he's probably more of an inside forward. He's a player you want to get near the box, not out wide as we saw him under Erik Ten Hag. So with Milan, with Conceição, whether he plays 4-3-3 or goes to this 4-4-2, I think it will really work.
I know you're on your day, but did you just say that Ademola Lookman's the best player on the planet right now?
Ademola Lookman right now is...
On your debut, you've made a very big shout.
Look, we've got to respect the guys in Serie A. Gasperini's Atalanta were sitting top of Serie A for a long time. But I just think you look at what he's done in the last year. He's so devastating, and he's really become that player that's in his prime right now. So I'm going to stick by it. Lookman, best player in the world right now.
He's up there, for sure.
I reckon Mo Salah might be making another tweet on you, that man, Dave. OK, what about other outgoings then? Because obviously there was huge reports in The Athletic that suggest the club would reluctantly sell Kobbie Mainoo, Alejandro Garnacho, Rasmus Højlund were just a few to name to comply with financial rules. I mean, just first of all, Dan, they're huge names, especially the 3 I've mentioned. What do you just make of that, just firstly?
I think we were all quite surprised yesterday evening when David Ornstein of The Athletic, quite a few other outlets were also reporting similar stories as well. And I think if you're, first of all, a Manchester United fan, you're going, whoa. First of all, Kobbie Mainoo, we saw what he could do against Liverpool on the weekend. He's had a slight challenging season, especially after Euros. He's played a lot of football in the last 12 months. But, we saw his potential against Liverpool. He's an excellent midfielder, still so young as well. The other 2, Alejandro Garnacho, he's been in and out of the team since Ruben Amorim has arrived. Where he stands with Amorim, especially in this 3-4-3 system, I don't think he's yet to find whether that's a wing-back position or one of those 10s behind a striker. And Rasmus Højlund, we saw he had a chance against Liverpool. I think for all 3, they're all young, aren't they? And I think Manchester United find themselves in a position with Amorim. Are they planning really for a redevelopment of this squad for the long-term future, or do they need to get rid of these younger players to start really getting players for the now? We talked about Victor Gyökeres yesterday. He's 26, 27. Is that the type of profile they need to be looking at rather than hoping these young players can, in the coming years, maybe show up?
I feel like it's something that we've seen in the last few years with Chelsea especially and Arsenal in terms of selling your homegrown talent because of they're your most, sellable assets in terms of the quality that we've seen from Kobbie Mainoo and Garnacho. But for United fans, they'll be gutted because in the last few years, these are players that they've relied on. And even though they're so young, they've showed maturity to stand out in the biggest moments. I'm sure they both got goals in the FA Cup final as well. So I think it'll be difficult, but for United's perspective, if they're fully going to back Amorim and what he wants for the team, they might have to look at these type of players.
But you look at those two players, they're two players that should be part of Manchester United's future massively. You mentioned Mainoo against Liverpool, won 4 out of his 7 tackles. No player on the pitch managed more. You look at Garnacho as well, his impact off the bench has been great. 8 goals, 5 assists, been directly involved in a goal every 120 minutes. That is a great record. But Manchester United right now, they need a clean slate under Ruben Amorim. And every player being up for sale is probably fine in that ilk in terms of motivating these guys. But Kobbie Mainoo has got to be the forefront of what Man United are doing going forward.
The last thing I would say as well, just on that, is I wouldn't worry just yet because a lot of these players are on contracts till 28. So calm down, Manchester United fans. It's okay for now. We're not talking about this window. It's all good.
Yeah, we will keep you up to date, of course, on any of those players. But we have got an update sticking with Manchester United. And obviously with Rashford possibly on the move in this window, they are looking to strengthen their forward line. And they have made inquiries for PSG's Randall Kolo Muani. I feel like we spoke about Marcus Rashford maybe being the name of this window, but this guy could be too. They have made inquiries for him and they have a long-standing interest in the French international. They would, however, prefer a permanent deal or at least a loan with an obligation to buy. Dave, Randall Kolo Muani, is that someone that you feel, if Marcus Rashford does leave Manchester United, could come in to not maybe replace him, but just to add another addition?
He's a player that would suit the system, I think. You look at his best footballs at Eintracht Frankfurt, playing a very similar system with 2 attacking midfielders in close proximity. I think that would be the thing when I look at his time at PSG. Yes, he underperformed in front of goal according to XG. He didn't really have the game time as well. His minutes were less than 1,700 minutes, which is not a lot for a player of his quality. But at the same time, I think he's a player that needs to bounce off people. You look at that season at Eintracht Frankfurt, it was figures around 15 goals, 11 assists in the Bundesliga. So it's that duality. He's not a clinical goal scorer, he's not prolific, but he'll create moments for his teammates. He'll be involved. He's always a bit of a threat on that back post as well. So it does suit the system. Like Gyökeres suits Amorim's system. He's a player that I feel would improve Manchester United's forward line in a sense. And if it's a loan deal with an option to buy, seems like smart business.
Let's get to transfer talk. Omar Marmoush, potentially, from Manchester City. Augie, let's start with you for this one. He's flying right now with Eintracht Frankfurt. Is he someone that you could see Manchester City making a move for, potentially this window or maybe this summer?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, City didn't replace Julian Alvarez when he left in the summer, and although Erling Haaland is still, hot on Mo Salah's heels in the Golden Boot race to the Premier League, he's not been the Erling Haaland that we know this season. He's not scored as many goals, and when he doesn't score, City have struggled. So I think City would definitely look at Marmoush, but I think the Eintracht Frankfurt sporting director said today that it would take something absolutely ridiculous to even convince them to even negotiate. Now, Eintracht have still got a chance of qualifying for the Champions League through the Bundesliga, and that's a big thing for them. So they're not in any pressure to sell. But obviously, for players and clubs, if Man City decide to throw money at it, then it'll be hard one for them to turn down. But I think at this rate, that is a 50-50. But certainly City is a player that City like, and he fits the kind of the prototype or the identity that Pep likes. He's an Alvarez-type player. End of the day, he scores lots of goals, and he's good off the front, man. So, yeah, it'd be a good sign.
Elemi, you can take this next one. Randall Kolo Muani is not having a great time of it at PSG. He's been linked with Spurs. Would that be a move that would suit both?
It would suit Daniel Levy and PSG's Nasser Al-Khelaifi because they're very good friends. And I think that's what this is. It's just like an amicable situation here. I personally, from a footballing perspective for Tottenham, I don't like it at all. Muani is very talented, but he's very inconsistent. And that's the last thing that Tottenham needs. Another inconsistent player, Exhibit A in Timo Werner. So, I think he's probably a player that probably needs to go to a team that's more secure of who they are and trying to prove himself, as opposed to go to a team where there's a lot of inconsistency, there's a lot of back and forth in terms of the system, and also somebody that's entering a Premier League that he's never played in. So for Levy and Nasser Al-Khelaifi, I'm sure it's great. For everybody else, well, maybe it's specifically Tottenham, I don't like it.
Stevie, let's talk Kobe Mainoo at Manchester United. And ESPN FC ran a piece, as did a lot of the papers in the United Kingdom, saying that although they don't want to sell, if they were to get rid of either Mainoo or Garnacho, 100% of the sale would go towards the PSR regulations, which would help them down the road. Chelsea were linked with Mainoo. Is this a non-starter, or potentially could you see something like this happening?
Well, there's two things of what I'd like to say. Number one is, to me, Kobe Mainoo is at his best when his team have the ball or he has the ball. I am not convinced that Kobe Mainoo is as good without the ball. Defensively, I don't see him making challenges. I don't see him breaking up play. I see him following runners, but unfortunately, he's always seems to be behind them, trying to catch up. You know, he is, to me, he is no dynamic central midfielder that can defend for his team. You know, with the ball, I think absolutely he is quality. He looks cool and calm and collected, but I absolutely have question marks over Kobe Mainoo when it comes to defending in the middle of the park. In terms of Chelsea, he again, because of that, he doesn't fit what Chelsea want to do. You know, Caicedo and Lavia in particular, you know, getting around the middle of the park, closing things down. Enzo Fernandez, not quite as, doesn't get around as good as the other two, but certainly does a lot of that. So Kobe Mainoo doesn't fit the bill in the middle of the park. I think that the Chelsea need or Chelsea have right now. So I don't see it. And again, I'd love to hear what Augie thinks about Mainoo, because, as I said, I am not convinced this guy can defend.
Well, it's a good point, that, because I think that although Kobe Mainoo, like you said, Steve, he's very good with the ball, and he does kind of sometimes help the game tick for United, he isn't quick. And I think the one thing that really holds him back is that he's one-paced, and he lets players get away from him. Yeah. If the game is going in his favour, he's a very good player, Kobe Mainoo, and he's still only young, but he doesn't have a burst of pace. And I think that will ultimately hold him back from being a kind of a world-class midfielder. I think he doesn't get around the pitch quick enough. But on saying that, if Man United had 20 players that they were willing to sell, he would be 18 or 19 on the list. He's not a player they're looking to sell. The reality is that United have got financial issues right now. And yes, you know, I was going to say in a perfect world, in an imperfect world where they had to sell somebody to get somebody in, he would be one they would look to do. But there are lots and lots of players ahead of Kobe Mainoo. And the reality is he will end up negotiating a new contract. His current deal expires in 2027. And United have an extra option on that. So there's no rush to do a deal with him. But I think there's also an element of this where I think people at United are trying to, you know, dampen expectations on certain players and salaries right now. This isn't the Man United of Ed Woodward. They're not throwing money around on wages and fees. They're trying to be sensible. So if people around Kobe Mainoo are trying to get a new deal at silly money, this is a message to say ain't going to happen. But and with Stevie, I think ultimately, defensively and in terms of mobility to get around the pitch, he isn't quite there.
Can I just add, just one thing from a Chelsea perspective. You know, I think Chelsea fans need to remember as well, whether they like it or not, and I have my own issues with this situation, and I agree with both the boys. Chelsea are expecting Kendry Páez, the very electric Ecuadorian star, coming in this summer. Andre Santos as well on loan, who's coming back. Estevao, another great talent as well. Not necessarily the same position of Mainoo, but my point remains. This roster is just going to get bigger rather than smaller, even before Mainoo. To me, Mainoo's best option, if he doesn't stay with Manchester United, is I think he should just go to the Bundesliga, go to a place where maybe can help him grow a little bit at 19 years old. The Premier League might not be the best option right now if he doesn't stay with Manchester United. But from a Chelsea perspective, there's a lot of talent still yet to come at Cobham, and it would just be another waste, I think.
Let's talk about a top-flight English central defender with someone who played in the English top flight as a top defender, Stevie Nicol. Mark Gahey has been linked with Chelsea. We continue that theme. Badiashile, Fofana, both hurt right now. It's Colwill and Acheampong was the latest. Would Gahey to Chelsea make sense? Because obviously those two have got a past.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it makes sense. That's absolutely the one spot I think they need to strengthen. I'm not a huge fan of what they have right now. I'm not a huge fan of Fofana. I'm not a huge fan of Tolson. I'm not a huge fan of Disasi either. You know, so yeah, I think absolutely Chelsea needs strengthening there. And you know, if you look around at what there is, then Gahey absolutely would fit the bill. To me, it seems a little bit of a no-brainer. There's no question he ain't going to be staying at Palace for too much longer. And I think Chelsea 100% need a centre-back. And listen, he's no Franz Beckenbauer, but you know what you're getting. And I think from a defensive point of view, I'll settle for that every day of the week. When I can put a centre-back on the field and I know exactly what I'm going to get from him, then I think it makes sense for Chelsea.
The last one on Transfer Talk this week is Marcus Rashford. Now, if you've already heard this week's podcast of the Football Reporters with Rob, with James, and with Ollie, then you'll have heard what Oggie's about to say. But I think it's fair, if you haven't, because you spent a decent chunk of the start of your podcast this week talking about Marcus Rashford and potential landing spots. So please let us know if you heard anything further about where Marcus Rashford may end up if it's not going to be Manchester United keeping hold of him.
Well, there's still a chance that might happen. You know, that may ultimately be the best option for everybody because he's on massive wages. He's a Manchester boy and United need goals. But if he was prepared to get his head down, Marcus Rashford, and work to suit Ruben Amorim, then I think staying there would be the best thing for all concerned. But that's not going to happen. It's quite clear that he wants out. Now, there aren't many options for him. You know, AC Milan are supposedly interested, but I'm not too sure how solid it is because first of all, the wages would be a problem. Secondly, they've got Rafael Leao and Christian Pulisic who like to play off the left, where Rashford likes to play. He hasn't scored many goals recently, so I don't quite see what the appeal of Marcus Rashford is at 27. With probably the past 18 months, he's not performed. So options are limited. You know, Borussia Dortmund is a possibility in the Bundesliga, a kind of a Jadon Sancho style loan, but right now, I think the Marcus Rashford camp's a lot of heavy lifting in terms of driving up a market and suggesting there's a lot of interest, when the reality is there isn't. If there was, then United would be happy to...
Hasnod Manchester United stankt on Randall Colomiani and Nino Mendes. Manchester United wins itself in a challening position. Currently sitting with a negyddol 5 goal different in the Premier League. As the team grapples with its scoring woes, the opportunity to pursue a player they previously considered 2 years ago coiled be a gamechange. The club has not ruled out the possibility of securing Randall Colomiani on loan from Paris Saint-Germain. At 26, Miani was on United's radar last summer, initially linked with a move from Eintracht Frankfurt, but the club ultimately opted for Rasmus Højlund. However, Miani's current situation at PSG, starting just week this season, and netting only 2 goals, has not diminished his value. Notably, he has continued to earn the trust of Verenigd National Team Coach Didier Deschamps, starting in eye of the Nations League matches this vash and scoring a goal. United is clearly open to bolstering its attacking options, as they seek to resolve their long-standing goal-scoring issue. With only 23 goals from 20 games, their genki is palpable. Højlund was joined from Atalanta for a fydd at coiled risto 72 million. Has struggled to win the net, scoring just tweaked in the league this season. In contrast, Joshua Birkbe, who moved from Bologna for 36.5 million, has won the back of the netty teams. It remains under scrutiny for showing a substitution at the 33-minute mark during a recent 2-0 loss to Newcastle. Birkbe's name has even been linked to a potential transfer to Juventus. Manuhile Nino Mendes, another PSG player and a teammate of Miani, has also drawn attention, though United is not actively pursuing the left back this month. At just 22 years old, Mendes has been a consistent starter at PSG and is contracted until 2026. Although United is expected to search for a left back in the summer, the current situation makes immediate moves happening. Terell Malacia recently returned from a 552 injury layoff, but has struggled to regain form, while Luke Shaw continues to recover from a hamstring injury and hasn't returned since February in Degui. In Simari, as Manchester United navigators through its current scoring strictness, the potential recruitment of both Randall Colomiani and Nino Mendes coiled provid michneded solutions, reinforcing the Siad as they aim to return to their winning way.